Hello everyone and welcome to this GSMA membership roadshow. Lovely to see so many people on the line. Today we will be discovering the engines behind decision making and solutions at the GSMA, and we have a great lineup of speakers for you. Next slide. So just to run through our agenda this morning, we will be introduced to our working group chairs that are joining us today, and then Ian Pennell, our chief architect, will have a fireside chat with the working groups to give you some insight to what they've been working on in the areas of artificial intelligence, blockchain, eSIM and security. We will then have a short introduction to the GSMA membership by Barney Stinton, and then the session will be closed. So moving to the next slide. So just a brief review of which working groups we'll be looking at today. If you're not familiar with the working groups, they are the parts of the GSMA that influence industry solutions, implement new services, collaborate with the experts, and ensure business continuity. They focus on various areas: networks, roaming, devices, eSIM and SIM technologies, billing and data exchange, fraud and security, internet technologies, and intellectual property. And now I would like to hand over to Ian Pennell to introduce you to our speakers this morning. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Julia. I hope everyone can hear me and perhaps see a little image of me on your screen as well. Again, welcome to you all. For this morning session, we're going to be looking at four of our working groups and have a little chat with four chairs of those groups. Perhaps I'll start by introducing them all and perhaps give them a moment to introduce each other. First from Tim, Sergio Cozzolino, who's the chair of the eSIM and SIM groups.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for the introduction. The eSIM group, it's a group that's running within the GSMA since 10 years ago, and we were creating a lot of specification regarding the remote SIM provision, and probably I will give you just a flavor of what we are doing at the moment in a couple of minutes. So that's quite important, as the SIM is probably the core of our business, as we are going just to manage our customer subscription through the SIM, and today we have the opportunity to manage these in a digital way using the remote SIM provision.
Thank you, Sergio. And moving on, we have David Rogers from Copperhorse, who is the chair of our fraud and security group.
But yeah, with the fraud and security group is one of the oldest working groups in GSMA, and I'm honoured to be the current chair of it. So we have thousands of members. We work on lots and lots of different areas, which we'll talk about soon. Myself have a long history of working both within the vendor community, but also for operator organisations, and have a personal interest in AI, in trusted computing, and privacy.
Thank you, David. And sorry, I was going to say final. I missed Kai. Apologies to Kai. So that's not fine. Perhaps I could introduce Kai Fritz from Vodafone, who's the chair of our terminal steering group.
Hello, Ian. No problem. Yeah, TSG, Terminal Steering Group, deals, of course, as the name says, with everything that is terminal or device related for the benefit of the mobile ecosystem. We're providing information like guides and white papers. We are providing requirements with technical specifications and interoperability compliance with tests for certification bodies like GCF and PTCRB. On top of that, TSG defines the details that go into the tech request form that manufacturers need to complete when they apply for a tech. And by the way, I like that at least David has a fireside at his place.
We have the Shamit Bhat, who's actually from the GSMA, but manages the Internet Working Group. Shamit.
Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me okay. I'm Shamit Bhat, and I work with the GSMA, as Ian said, and I lead the Internet Group. And within the Internet Group, the focus is primarily on evaluating the current and emerging Internet and web-based technologies. And we are looking for opportunities or threats for the. And the objective is primarily to build consensus around an industry-wide response, and where needed, we can take a lead in coordinating a concerted effort to execute the agreed response. As you can imagine, there is a lot of discussions around some cutting-edge technology, and we try to balance the business aspects with the tech aspects. We have great levels of engagement with the standardization bodies such as the IETF and the W3C. Currently, the focus has been on blockchain and quantum computing or the quantum networking activities. And we are soon going to launch 2 new subgroups, the DLT group, which is the much needed blockchain program for the GSMA. And it's kicking off next week on 4th of May. And the second one is the Identity and Data group, which is the former Mobile Connect Interest group, which is kicking off on the 18th of May.
Thanks very much, Shamit. And thank you to all of you for your brief introductions. Perhaps we'll start talking in a little bit more depth with each of you in turn. And I think I'd like to start on a topic that keeps me up late at night at the moment, primarily because we're having a whole week of late night meetings in European time anyway, and that's eSIM. So Sergio, perhaps you could explain what topics the eSIM group are currently working on, what we're trying to achieve in the eSIM group this year, and also the types of companies that are involved in the work.
Yeah, let's start from the last point. We have more than 80, 90 active members taking part in the meetings. They are happening every time during the day in this period due to the virtual meetings we are having in order to satisfy all the different timescapes. So the main focus, the companies who are taking part in the group are MNOs, are MVNOs, are also handset manufacturers, SIM manufacturers, and also platform manufacturers as well. With the remote SIM provisioning, we were introducing also some managing components like subscription and profile management that are happening through platforms. So that's a variety of members which are not traditionally linked just to the SIM environment. And the scope for that is just that we were creating those RSP remote SIM provisioning specification for the M2M environment first, and so that was the scope for the initial part of the job we were doing within this group when we started in 2010. And then since 2015, we were focusing on the consumer market, and we were able just to deploy up to now. We have a version 2.0. That's the official version for the consumer specification. That's enabling more than 40 handsets available on the market today, which are just using this technology. And we have also smart watches, so we have tablets and laptops who are just endorsing this kind of technology. The focus for us today is mainly just to consolidate and trying to deliver the version 3 version, and then an interim version that could be 2.3. We are almost closer to achieve it, but the next real target will be just to deliver version 3 of these specifications. And when I refer to specification, it's just going to include requirements plus technical architectural implementation, but there is also a huge activity related to certification and also all the testing procedures that have been deployed by this group. So it's quite an end-to-end process we are putting in place in order to guarantee the integrity and all the entire process. So, and today, just to give you some figures, we have more than 69 countries around the world from the latest analysis that the GSMA was doing, which are implementing this technology. And there are more than 170 operators with who are deploying these commercial solutions on the market. So that's probably the most important figures we have in place today in order to measure the value of the job we are doing within.
Thanks very much, Sergio. I would note that I think eSIM seems to be one of our busiest working groups. It has so many meetings and calls, and as the group moves around the clock, all the various different subgroups having their meetings every night or early every morning. It's quite challenging but fun, actually, indeed. Perhaps you could talk a little bit about the key impacts of the technology and how you envisage eSIM technology sort of evolving in the future and the use cases it supports.
Yeah, even if the meetings are so frequent and it's quite challenging for everybody, I could just tell you that the participation is very, very active. So it's quite positive feedback because it's demonstrating that there is a value behind all this job we are doing. And the demonstration of that is just that the use cases which are supporting the eSIM technology are really different. We were talking at the beginning about machine-to-machine environment, so we are enabling a lot of use cases related to the automotive environment, plus also the consumer electronic devices like smartwatches or wearables who are going just to require connectivity, and so the embedded SIM is the best probably technology in order to enable connectivity on these kind of devices. But eSIM will become also an enabler for all the 5G IoT applications. So as a part of a new digital experience that's going to be related to these services, and there will be a lot of vertical markets who are going to take benefit from eSIM technology. While for the consumer adoption, it took a long in order to have the first products available on the market, but it's becoming more and more popular. And also the education of the customer is becoming more and more attractive. We have countries where there is more than 20% of customers who are going just to ask for eSIM technology. And Italy is one of these countries, so it's a good job we were doing in order to also to educate the market in order to adopt this kind of new solutions. And that's going to enable a new digital process. So that's also a challenge for operators who had to implement this technology in their own markets, but it's going to create some real benefits, for example, on logistic processes or enabling new distribution channel that could be completely electronic distribution channel. And there is also a way of also to have a dynamic portfolio of offers within our list of services that we are offering to the customer. So the eSIM technology is just an enabler in this case, as it was in the past for subscriptions. But today is opening to the operators more and more opportunity to create value and new business opportunities.
Thanks, Sergio. I think you've hit on a very valuable point there around digitization of distribution. That's something that's impacting all industries, not just telecoms, obviously, but in eSIM, it's a prime example of digitization at work. Perhaps moving on.
If I may just add the last point, it's we're going to discover digitalization in our lives as a consequence of pandemic. While for the eSIM, that was a process that started 10 years ago. So that's something that we are quite proud to anticipate this kind of market requirement.
Perhaps that was very insightful of us 10 years ago, yes. Perhaps moving on to the terminals group and Kai. Perhaps you could explain what the terminals group is currently doing and look to achieve this year, and also perhaps reflect on the types of what is a terminal. People have traditionally thought of handsets, but I think as you might explain, it's a lot more than just that.
Yeah, I mean, terminal devices, whatever you call it, it expands any day now. I mean, IoT devices come in every shape and form, so it's hard to keep track of all of them. But what TSG does is it covers a wide range of features, and that should be in the interest of the whole ecosystem. So OEMs, mobile network operators, test equipment manufacturers, test houses, For example, we're providing quarterly updates and improvements to a document called TS11 Field Trial Test. And that's used by certification bodies like GCF and PTCRB. This document is really used by the whole ecosystem, and we have a wide range of legacy technologies that are covered, like 2G, 3G, 4G. Now we went on with 5G and IoT. And when it comes to TSG, I think the focus for the next year would be on RCS, for example, providing tests for the latest requirements documents, which include chatbots. We have new work that we are currently defining for network slicing and ultra-wideband. At present, we're still defining the work, so we don't duplicate work. But in my mind, the hottest topic still in TSG is artificial intelligence. We just recently published TS47 in February, and the group just last week started working on a test book, and later will continue on version 2 of the TS47 requirements, and probably go from there.
And perhaps you could explain what TS. It is quite a key feature in the TSG work item. So what is TS? What does TS47 do, and what is likely to be in the next release of it?
Yeah, so the work was proposed initially by China Telecom in late 2017 and approved a year later. The work was following in the footsteps of smart systems like Alexa, Bixby. I mean, smart systems were entering our houses, and terminals were already supporting features like photo enhancement and text recognition. And there was need for standardization at that point. Work on the first draft was driven by China Telecom, who chaired the work, with expert input from other members of the group. The work progressed slowly, with many conflicting proposals needing to be discussed and compromised on. Once the first draft was completed, it went for a review by the device security group, who proposed additional changes, and this took a further year to agree. But finally, beginning this year, I think everyone was pretty happy with what we achieved and what it looked like. Not that it's really finalized, but it was a good basement to publish, and from there on, we will move now. Work is not complete with the first topics for biometrics, speech recognition, image processing, and augmented reality. This will be improved for version 2, and we only scratched the surface with version 1, but the group is motivated to continue and has now started discussing test cases to test the agreed requirements in TS47, and to later add more content to TS47. I'm looking forward to a lot of hot topics and discussions in the next months.
It was certainly. I can remember going to when we were still traveling. I can recall going to a meeting in Dubai. I think it was on the topic, and it was really interesting. Thank you. Perhaps you could explain a little bit, Kai, about how TSG determines what work it does, because it is a very wide, a very diverse group in terms of the types of topics it addresses. It goes from test cases on traditional cellular networks to wireless LAN and things like that, but also across different areas of terminals, sort of user experience, client functionality, all sorts of things. It's a very diverse group. How do you agree on the sorts of topics that the group addresses?
I mean, all GSMA members can propose new topics. That's for sure. The approval would follow AA35 if it's entailed the creation of a specification, or AA34 if it was not a specification. TSG operation guidelines, TS16, provide more details, and I think it's a good start if you want to ease into the work and want to find out what it's all about. But ultimately, AA35 is a process that TSG follows. Work is contribution driven, But if there's no support from the members, it does not get started.
Okay, thank you very much. Perhaps I'll move along now to our fraud and security group. David, Kai actually mentioned the role that some elements of the fraud and security group do in supporting some of the other working groups as well. It's not just a self-contained group working on its own topics, but and I think that extends across to many of the groups as well. But perhaps we can start talking about the fraud and security group meetings first. One of the things that impresses me is the way that the plenaries that happen every I think it's 3 times a year are thematic and cover specific topics. I think that works really well. Perhaps you can talk about some of the topics you've covered in the past, what you plan to cover in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's actually a nice segue from what Kai described about AI. So actually, our last meeting did focus on the topic of AI. I guess security and the fraud work underpins everything that we do. So we're our activity is naturally cross-cutting, and so, as you say, we tend to end up supporting some of the other activities. Certainly on the general topic, it's obviously huge. It's going to change all of our lives in one way or another. And if you look at every type of technology that we're employing within networks and within devices, there's some piece of AI that people have on their roadmap, and also attackers have it on their roadmap. In fact, you could argue that attackers have been using rudimentary AI for things like spamming and so on for many, many years. So we have this challenge of the sort of the good side and the bad side of AI. And we discussed that at the meeting. We had a number of academics as external speakers come and give their point of view. Obviously, we know that regulators are looking at this area, and I think that also speaks to a large part of the work that we do within the Fraud Security Group, which is actually to get ahead of regulation, because most of the people that are working on this have a good view, a good foresight on where regulation might come, and what governments are concerned about and what citizens are concerned about. So we tend to try to do the right thing. That's generally, our interest. That's why people are interested in the topic of security. And so we have been ahead of the game on topics, for example, like device security updates. We recently released a document that calls for 3 years of security updates from release of a device. Widely supported across the membership, and actually ahead of proposed regulation that says something similar. So really, we're leading the way. We're taking leadership on some really key topics, and a prime example was the TSG AI work that looked at AI on devices. We have a massive school of different interests in GSMA. And some of the topics, some of the discussions are very, very difficult, but what's key is the outcome, and that we come to a consensus that gets things right for everybody. And I think that's certainly what we managed to achieve on that work. And I guess it's a really good demonstration of the power of collaboration.
Thanks, David. Yeah, and I think I'd also commend the work that the Fraud and Security Group in terms of helping companies out operationally through some of the reporting measures that they have, both in terms of operational fraud risks and such like, but also security vulnerabilities and reporting mechanisms for that as well. I don't know if you want to comment on those.
Yeah, so again, we're quite unique in that respect, and we're supported by a great team from the GSMA staff in doing this. So we operate what's known as coordinated vulnerability disclosure, but for the entire industry, and the mobile industry is quite unique in that. So the topic of vulnerability disclosure and dealing with security researchers is still quite new to some industries. But some of those vulnerabilities that are disclosed could cost the industry, millions of pounds or dollars, and cause immense damage to consumers and to enterprises. So if we can get ahead of that, and if we can work with the security research community and academics to deal with industry-wide issues and catch them early, then that's a great service that we can provide for everybody. And that's really absolutely fantastic. What we've been doing more recently is to try to, so a large part of our work at the plenaries and certainly on the fraud side is sharing intelligence. So sharing information about how attackers and criminals have done certain things. And obviously that's not going to be isolated for one operator or one vendor. And that shared knowledge enables us to protect everybody. But this expanse of what we do, is so broad now and the attacks are so rapid in terms of their changing mechanisms that we have to automate. We have to actually use AI in some cases. We have to professionalize what we're doing on intelligence sharing. So GSMA has called a eSIM service, which is based on structured intelligence sharing. And they use standardized formats that are also used in the IT world. So we're coming closer and closer to the way that IT companies operate their systems. And by having that timely intelligence in an organized fashion, we can react really, really quickly to things. And so anybody can sign up to that eSIM service. There's also a nascent intelligence sharing service that people can sign up to too. And really, we're trying to continue to sort of revolutionize the way that we work.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Obviously, you mentioned earlier that the Fraud and Security Group is one of the oldest groups of the GSMA, and in the traditional area it really focused on in the early days around network security. There's still a lot of work to be done and going on. Perhaps you could talk a little bit about what's going on and hot in that area at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we will always carry legacy. But I think GSM is still around. It's one of the oldest operational technologies that we're still using globally, and has really been a fantastic success story. But with that comes the fact that attackers really, really understand that technology now, and it's very, very difficult to retrofit modern security techniques to that. So, but we know where the problems lie, and we know what the solutions are. So we have a number of recommendations on how to implement, for example, signaling firewalls, how to configure things properly, and we also have created a new set of recommendations which sets a baseline security model for mobile networks. So taking into account that legacy, particularly as we go into the 5G era. So signaling security and interconnect is always going to be a challenge, because we're talking about a global landscape and all sorts of geopolitical issues and considerations and difficulties. People think this stuff is easy because it works, but it works because people put a lot of work in and a lot of effort from hundreds of companies worldwide. So going into the 5G space, we're working across the different working groups to ensure that we get the security right for interconnect into the future. And it's a very difficult topic, but we have the world's leading experts working on it.
Yeah. Thanks. I would echo that actually, and some people might be aware that one of my tasks in my job is to actually quality review the documents that are published by the GSMA, and recently I had the pleasure, I would say, of reviewing the SIP security guidelines that the Fraud and Security Group produce, and there's a really good document that I'd actually recommend to everybody to read. Not only was it just good on security, just as a general training manual on SIP, it was very good as well.
I mean, yeah, it's such an honour to work with all of these people. Actually, he'll maybe thank me for this or not, but the editor of that document is also an Egyptologist, and so if you ever need hieroglyphs read, he's the guy to go to. It's just incredible, some of the people that we've got working in these working groups.
I have a boss who speaks Elvish, so I can get that. Perhaps moving on to slightly left of field. One of the things I know you're keen on in your group, David, is inclusivity, and perhaps you could just talk about how you're doing, how you're trying to increase the inclusivity within the fraud and security group.
Yeah, I mean, I will start by saying that the GSMA in general, because we are a global community, are naturally inclusive. But of course, we can always do better. And one of the challenges that we have in the engineering world in general, of course, is particularly gender diversity. And it's something that you have to work at. It's very easy to sort of say, well, yeah, we've got this problem, but that's how it is. But actually, if you look at some of the ways that these problems are, I guess, solidified and institutionalized, it can be changed. And actually, it starts with basic things. So, for example, the job specifications, we reviewed all of those. So, for example, the chairs and the deputy chair roles, to make sure that the language that we use in there was not exclusive, that it didn't set the bar. And I'll give you one example. This is not just about gender diversity, but a lot of people don't realize that I don't have a first degree. I started work when I was 16. So actually, one of the requirements was must have a bachelor's degree, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's, I understand the sentiment of that. And what it is obviously to try to get qualified people, but you can get that by changing the language, and it's little things like that cause people to either not apply for a role, or to feel that that this isn't for me and I'm not wanted, and so what we've really tried to do is address those factors. We obviously we recognise that it is challenging, and that there is a pipeline issue. And we would really like to promote the fact that if you are interested in the topic and you're interested in a particular area, there's nothing stopping you. And we would absolutely welcome contributors, editors, and leaders, and we'll keep working on that. And we'll do our best.
Thanks. I wholeheartedly commend that. And just as an aside, you mentioned about not having a first degree. I started off my career as a technician apprentice.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, thank you, David. And it's nice to see that someone brought a fire to the fireside chat.
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah. Moving on to the internet group. Shamit, perhaps you can talk a little bit more about the activities in the internet group, and in particular around blockchain and what's going on in the blockchain area.
Sure. So, as I was saying, that we form the position and write a lot of white papers. I would like to point out that Internet Group is one of the newest groups in the whole scheme of the working groups. We were talking earlier about this AG being one of the oldest. And in a very short span of time, we've been able to write around 28 white papers, and which have been on varying different topics. The topics could be like multi-access edge computing, DNS encryption, caching services, quick protocol, blockchain, obviously, and content computing. So these are just some examples, but the range is really wide. And it's easier to write the white papers, but what I also like to highlight here is the impact we are having. So I'll take three examples, which is quick, DNS encryption, and of course blockchain, which is kind of a happy scenario. It's important we go through that as well. So in terms of quick, this is a technology which was proposed by Google, and after that ITF took effort to standardize it. For the ones who don't know, briefly, the communication protocol is the TCP/IP primarily today, and Google suggested a much enhanced way of moving the data packets in the internet using a quick protocol, which basically makes it much faster. Operators in past have struggled actually to have their voice heard in the IETF. With the quick activity, actually, not only did we write a white paper, which were actually, able to change some of the specifications and be heard within the IETF community, wherein the operators were able to impact some good changes, which perhaps would work to the advantage of the operator community. And I think that's a big win, even though the change might be insignificant compared to overall specifications of Quick, but it does mean that the group has been able to achieve something that was unheard of in the past. The second example is the DNS encryption, and this was the end-to-end encryption, or I would say partial encryption of the DNS traffic over the internet, wherein we felt that there were some unintended consequences, particularly around the perceived centralization of the internet through this encryption. Although GSMA wholeheartedly welcomed this extra security, but what we were concerned as an operator community is about these unintended consequences, wherein operators no longer would have control over some of this traffic, wherein they might not be able to fulfill some of their obligations towards the government, towards their subscribers, and that was a big problem area. And we worked within the community, and we also worked with the internet community in order to make our issues understandable to them. And although it is work in progress still, but I believe that we've been able to make inroads, we've been able to make our voice heard, and it also led to creation of a group just to discuss these operational issues in IETF, which is again a big impact, wherein we just didn't write a white paper, we utilized that to form a position, and we went ahead and actually impacted a change at the IETF, and also made the big internet companies understand the position of the mobile operators. Now let me come to blockchain, and the reason I call it a happy scenario, because this is one scenario wherein we actually started with a white paper and are quite close to commercialization. So the blockchain discussions at the GSMA actually started, quite early, way back in 2017, and this was before the first hype around Bitcoin, which happened in late 2017, early 2018. At that point, the idea was just to understand what the technology can do for the mobile operators. So in early 2018, Feb 2018 to be precise, we basically earmarked some 15 different use case areas, not just the use cases, areas where telcos could benefit from the technology. This was followed by another white paper, which was written in 2019-20 term, wherein we focused on mapping specific use cases with requirements from the mobile operators and map it against the corresponding features of the blockchain technology and say, okay, blockchain does make sense for this use case for so-and-so reasons. And wherein it did not, we also said it doesn't make sense for these use cases for so-and-so reasons. And this was done as an exercise for 11 use cases, wherein we further drilled down, from the different 15 areas we had identified. Post that, we actually identified some focus areas wherein most of the debate within the telco space was happening and is still happening, which is, the wholesale settlement scenarios, payments, identity, and fraud prevention. And this was basically channeled into a recent document, which is the DLT shared vision for the mobile industry, wherein all our learnings from the past few years have been put together into the shared vision, which has been approved by the Internet Group. And as I was saying before, we would be starting off with a DLT program or a DLT subgroup under the Internet Group next week on 4th of May. And the responsibility of this group is basically to execute this shared vision we have agreed together with the industry. Now, another activity which started in parallel, which is quite interesting, was the blockchain wholesale roaming effort. And a lot of the key tenets of the discussions or concepts were actually born in the Internet Group discussions way back in 2017. And right now, wholesale roaming is one of the most mature use cases. What we intend to do is to integrate the blockchain for wholesale roaming initiative with the DLT group, so we can basically cross-pollinate and also benefit from the technology stack which has already been created in the BWR effort. Now, once these groups are brought together, there would be a lot of standardization activity, which is something IG has not been involved in the past. There would also be a lot of hands-on development activity as we plan to open source a lot of the code base which has been put together and continue to evolve that code base. And we believe that for any blockchain implementation, these standards and these specifications are going to inform the implementations. And as I was saying, this is really close to commercialization, and some of you would know that GSMA right now is in the process of launching a blockchain network. And I won't steal the thunder first from some of my other colleagues who would like to talk a lot more about it. But you'll hear some great news about it pretty soon. That's essentially the different activities and also the kind of impact we are having with different topics.
Yeah, I think the potential with a blockchain fabric across the whole telco community is quite an interesting prospect, not just in roaming and interconnect, but lots of other areas as well. And I'd also like to say, yeah, because obviously I was helping out on that DNS work with reaching out to other parts of the industry. I think that the power of collaborating with other companies and working with other segments was demonstrated in that, because it was through the work that we did and other organizations did in actually communicating the impact of encrypted DNS that actually caused the browser community and some of the DNS resolver companies to actually think a little bit harder about the sort of fast rollout plans they initially had, and to make sure that we addressed all of the consequences of rolling that technology out. A needed technology, but the consequences needed to be sorted as well. Perhaps you could talk about some of the other topics that the Internet Group are looking at in the next 12 months or so.
Blockchain obviously will be one of the biggest areas where we'll do a lot of work. The other topic is quantum networking and services. I think this is another very big technology which is coming up pretty fast, although quantum discussions have been taking place for decades now. But we are seeing some commercializations at this point wherein we are hearing that the operator community has done a lot of work already, which personally I was myself surprised with. We see week after week presentations wherein there is QKD based or the quantum key distribution based implementations. There is quantum random network generation related implementations being proposed, presented, trialed. There are quantum links being developed through various different efforts, particularly in Europe and America. And the operators are at the forefront of this work, which is quite interesting to see. And it also is basically channeling towards quantum safe internet sometime, not in the near future, but eventually, we'll get there. So that's definitely one topic which, we are quite excited about. The other one is the recent integration of the Mobile Connect interest group into the IG, and the new group will be called the Identity and Data Group. Now, as a lot of you would already know, that we had a program which dealt with the identity-related discussions, and it was split into different forums. And we basically would own the technical discussions part of it. So the Mobile Connect interest group activities will be rolled up into the IDG group. And the primary focus there, again, will be on trying to see how we can inform the standard specifications for any of the industry implementations. and also carry forward the good work which has been done from the past activities. Now, one thing which is quite interesting here, that's where we see the synergies with the other activities in IG, is the fact that the focus of the group of late has been on decentralized identity. And that marries really well with the DLT discussions we are having. And as Ian, you rightly pointed out, we have the opportunity to launch a network wherein all the different industry use cases could benefit from a common infrastructure or common blockchain infrastructure. And identity is certainly one of the big areas where we could come together and industry and do great things. And we believe that there are opportunities in fraud, in security related aspects. There are opportunities in payments related aspects. So, this ties in really well with the setup we are thinking, wherein there would be multiple commercial streams discussing a subject matter expert, which may be inside or outside IG. In this case, it happens to be within IG, and it'll be very interesting to note the synergies between the two groups. And we hope that the quantum discussions are also going to benefit some of the early challenges we see around blockchain because of the security aspects, wherein we believe that the cryptography aspect of it needs to evolve to keep pace with the quantum discussion. So we can already see these intertwinings of these different topics wherein one can benefit from the other. So the focus at this time would be on these three topics.
Right, thank you very much. Well, thank you to all four of you. Before we finish, I'd perhaps like to have a bit of a little quickfire session on what you feel the membership can most contribute to each of your groups, and also to the wider industry, and what support you need from the wider industry. Perhaps take that in turn. I don't know. Should we start with David? Your picture's biggest on my computer at the moment, so I'll start with you.
So something that Sergio mentioned actually at the start is that obviously the mobile industry has massively moved into the different verticals that are using, whether it be eSIM or IoT, but all these new technologies. Actually, the first moment that I noticed that was when a toothbrush manufacturer started turning up at Mobile World Congress for their connected toothbrush. And so clearly we've got a lot to learn from those industries, as well as them coming to us for answers. So I certainly would like to see experts in some of the technologies that are used and so on. My company, for example, works a lot in automotive and medical as well, and they're very different sets of requirements. There's different regulations, there's different standards. We obviously, even just to support those functions, support the telephony for those functions, we need to understand them. So, maybe we need some agriculture specialists coming in. We certainly need to see companies from those different sectors coming into the GSMA.
I can bring my father-in-law, who used to be a dairy farmer. Like him. Thank you, Sergio. How about you?
Yeah, when I was referring to the vertical up, I should say that one of the main active contributors in our specification, especially for the machine-to-machine environment, is one of the leader company in the automotive environment. So we have the pleasure to have them on board, and they are contributing quite a lot in order to express their requirements. It's quite important to listen to their requirements in order to implement right specification that could satisfy all the different industries. So that's probably the value we need to collect today and engage more vertical contributors for that in order to satisfy all the different industry requirements. And only with that we will be able just to deploy products on the market which are valuables.
Yeah, thanks, Sergio, and I couldn't agree with you more. That's very true. Kai, how about you? What about in terminals?
Yeah, I think I would like to second what David and Sergio said. In a lot of cases, we really need experts, and a lot of companies they have those experts, but the delegates that we have within GSMA maybe don't know them and fear to reach out to them. So they shouldn't. And we really need that input. So I mean, it's crucial to get opinions from everybody. So not only is the same 5, 6, 7, 8 companies are driving everything. We need input from everyone. This only works together.
Thank you. Yes, and Shamit, finally.
Well, I would say in today's time, when there's a huge ongoing debate around data privacy and customers wanting to have more control over their personal data, and also in the process maintaining the distributed nature of the internet, which we all think is a fantastic thing, I believe IG's role is critical to keep the mobile industry informed about these developments and use its influence, whatever influence we have, to retain this true hierarchical nature of the internet. And if your role involves learning about internet and web-based technology or working on the internet and web-based technology, I think IG is the group. And I would be very happy to welcome you. Please get involved, learn about the group, provide us any feedback you may have or any specific topics you might want to introduce. We'll be all ears. And you'll see there are some very smart and intelligent people, who are working in IG, but I don't believe we've got everyone we need. So, you're all welcome to join.
Thanks, Shamit. And I'd like to finish off by saying thank you to all four of your speakers. First of all, for this session, but equally also for the valuable work you do to the whole GSMA all year round. So thank you very much. I'd like to now hand over to Barney Stinton, who's responsible in the GSMA for membership. Barney, all yours.
Thanks very much, Ian, and thank you everybody who took part in that chat. I think it's evidence that the success of that chat that I've got 5 minutes left to cover some membership bits and bobs. But I think what we'll do is we'll kind of power on through. Please do. We have 5 minutes for you to ask any questions that we can get answered. So please do put them in the chat. I'll come to them. But if I could go to the next slide, please. I just want to very quickly introduce this afternoon's session at 4 o'clock British Summer Time, where we'll be doing pretty much the same format as we've had today, but talking about 5G, Internet of Things, and open networks. Please do tune in. And these sessions, the ones yesterday as well, will be available and sent out to you to watch again. They are recorded. Next slide, please. So, we've talked a lot about the working groups, and you've had a real insight into how they work. There's quite a lot going on, and Info Center 2 is your key. That is the online hub that gives you access to all of these working groups, all of the information, and also all of the contacts that are members of the GSMA. So it really is a business enabling tool, as well as all the information that you need. If you don't have a login, or you are having problems logging in, please contact the membership team and we can sort it out pretty much instantly. It's very, very simple, and we're here to help. Just a very quick recap with 4 minutes to go. Please do type in those questions into the box if you have them. Membership is open. We've got 4 categories. Things have changed slightly this year. Operator membership remains the same. We have rapporteur membership, and that's open to MVNOs. And then we have industry members. That used to be called associates. Industry members are made up of the wider ecosystem that the GSMA is seeing, getting broader and wider all the time. As David spoke about, the market is growing and the industries are bridging into one, really. And then we have sector members. This is it's a brand new category, almost like a kind of bridging category, an entry category to those verticals we spoke about: financial services, manufacturing, aviation. It's a kind of toe in the water. It allows you to get involved in the topics of your interest and choice at a cheaper rate, if you like, but gives you an insight into the GSMA and hopefully convinces you to join up as full members. Next slide, please. I don't have time to go into this, but these are some of the other benefits. Working groups, obviously, as you've seen on this call, are the very core, the very foundation GSMA is about. And I've mentioned Info Centre, but there's lots of training and resources. You get discounts as members. Don't forget to look into discounts that you're entitled to. GSMA Intelligence is one of those services that enjoys a discount for membership. GSMA Intelligence, you can look it up on our website. It's very, very useful from an insight point of view, and we're very happy to introduce you to the GSMAI team, and they can set up demonstrations to run you through the system and the platform and show you what that's all about. But also the GSMAI, as a GSMA database, a device database, TAC allocation fees, security accreditation scheme, networking and events, and I'll come on to that. Also discounts there, and the regional support. Wherever you are in the world, you will have a head of region looking after you, and there are sub committees going on there, a lot of work going on in your region. Do make sure you're part of that. Next slide, please. I mentioned events. A couple of months ago, we enjoyed MWC Shanghai as a physical event and a virtual, so it was a hybrid, but we were there physically, and it was a great success. And we are looking forward to being in Barcelona in June, 28th of June to the 1st of July, with the theme of Connected Impact. It is going to be a different show, but we will be there in person. We look forward to meeting you, but you aren't able to come, do please sign up and visit us virtually. We have many processes and procedures in place to ensure safety and security of our visitors, guests. So we do look forward to seeing. If you want more information on those procedures and processes in place, please do get in contact with me. The next slide shows you how to get in contact with us. This is your GSMA membership team. We're here for you. We're here to support our members. And you can see at the bottom, there's one email address that we will all see. Not a huge team, so we will come back to you. You've got Yvette and Maria looking after you if you're an operator, and for all other types of categories, membership categories, you've got myself, Harry, Abel, and Lucy. Please do contact us. Any questions from today, anything you would like to ask, there are no questions in the chat, but if you'd like to ask a question of anyone you heard from today, please do contact membership@gsma.com. Also, Info Centre login issues, queries, or MWC Barcelona questions you'd like to ask, please do direct them to membership@gsma.com. So I think we are bang on 10 o'clock. Let me thank everybody who took part in this call today. And thank you very, very much for tuning in. Take care.